Hi there. At the top of the episode here, I want to ask everybody who's listening to do one or two things. If you haven't already, and you have the ability to, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave this show a rating or a review. They're not just good for our egos, they actually help us get more visibility. The feedback helps us kind of shape the show. We appreciate everybody who has done that. In addition, if you're feeling saucy, or if you can't leave an Apple Podcast review, consider telling your friends about the show if they like Stephen King or horror books or whatever the Dark Tower is. Either tweet about it or talk to somebody personally. Word of mouth is the only way we can grow, and we love seeing when people help spread the word. So 2 simple things, takes just a couple of minutes, and gosh, do we like seeing it happen. Here we go. Let's hear the rest of this fairy tale. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King. My name is Cole Ross, and today I am joined by Evan Thorne. Hey, Evan.
Hey, Cole.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me after I was out on medical leave last time.
Yeah, we were initially supposed to have you on with Sean, but you took a spill.
Yeah, I busted up my knee and broke my phone. On the bright side, I have a new phone. On the less bright side, same knee.
Yeah. You are not bionic as of yet.
Now I'm working on it, but
I think we're all working on it. We're going to get there as a society. We'll figure it out.
I believe in us.
Yeah. But I'm happy that you are, I'm not happy that you are still feeling hurt. I'm happy that you are okay and not like laid up in a hospital, like going after surgery or whatever.
Yeah, no, my knee modeling days are over, but
damn it.
Yeah.
And you just about got that Spalding account, for the knee pads. I very quickly tried to think of a brand for sporting goods that would sell knee pads.
Oh, man.
I hope I did okay. Spalding.
I feel like Spalding's a really good pick.
Okay. Woo. Yeah, so I'm very happy to have you here. You have landed on a very juicy section of the book.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So I kind of want to jump right into it because I don't want to steal any of that juice, any of that heat from the actual events here. But we are in the thick of the story within the story, the Wind Through the Keyhole, which Roland is telling both to his current quartet and also to a scared young boy.
Yeah, and this is a story that his mother told him when he was a child?
Yes.
I believe. That is a fucked up story to tell a kid. This whole thing is just like, man.
We remarked on that last... Go ahead.
It explains a lot about Roland.
It certainly does. It explains a lot about Gilead as a whole, that this is how they decide to teach their kids, hey, maybe pay attention to your raccoon dog when he starts doing circles and shit.
It seems like an awfully long way to underscore that. And it feels like it buries the lead an awful lot too, if that's really the the lesson to be taught in this fable.
Yes, both the point of the story and also the name of the story are consigned basically to minor paragraphs or footnotes.
Yeah, this is a story about a very sad child.
Yep, a very sad child who is he is born to circumstances.
Yep.
And he has a very tough journey to make.
Very, very sad child trying to help his very blind mom.
Yep. And also trying to, kill his very murderous stepfather. Back when all those 2 weeks ago, when I tweeted out the announcement about the episode, Sean, he retweeted it with a quote saying, "Hey, come listen to us talk about the greatest monsters of all fairy tales, dragons and step parents," which is totally true. So,
it really is.
If I didn't respond to that, then I want to immortalize it here. We are definitely traveling down a road that has some well-worn ruts, but there's some cool stuff about this. Like I am still all about this all these times reading it later. There's so many kind of details and contours and ways that it kind of like jukes toward the greater story.
Yeah, and you really get kind of the sense that Stephen King just has a very deep love and appreciation for fairy tales, which is not a surprise, but it's just fun. Like this feels like it would have been a very fun book for him to write.
Yes. Yeah.
And
a deep love of fairy tales, and also a deep love of his world. And when the two of those meet, he has the freedom to just kind of say, "Yep, this is what this society values, and here are the morals, and here's how we're going to get them across."
Yeah. So, Tim basically did you guys talk? I'm assuming you talked about this. The Covenant Man. Did you decide if he is or is not the Man in Black last time?
He absolutely is.
Okay, I have thoughts on that when we get a little bit further on, but I'm not sure. I wasn't sure what you guys landed on.
Yeah, there's a specific remark that Merlin makes that calls a little bit of it into question, but who knows how much any of this actually happens, and how much Merlin is telling the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tim.
Yeah.
Tim basically just got jerked around by the Man in Black, ostensibly. Yeah. Now he's off to find Merlin.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah. So the Covenant Man came. The pressure of this tax collection caused his mom to remarry after his dad died under mysterious circumstances. Covenant Man, it's our friend Randall Flagg, or the Man in Black, or any other, it's that character. It's that character. Kind of inadvertently led to Tim's mom being blinded, and also gave Tim kind of the seeds of the idea to go deep into the forest on what amounts to a fool's errand, pretty much, to get the cure for his mother's blindness. And the Man in Black, Covenant Man, he's got accomplices.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He has one just sexy little accomplice, Armanita.
Man, right? It is a very uncomfortable passage to read, because
Tim's 11.
Tim's 11, and you know exactly where it's going, and you know that Tim doesn't, and then it pans out 100% the way that you figure it will.
Yeah, it's like
at
the very end of the lumber road, he sees this green glow, right? And it's not the Covenant Man, but it's one of these the fairy people, that the Widow Smack told him about, warned him about, while she was also warning him about the Covenant Man. But this is Armanita, which sounds a lot like Amanita. Those poison, those poison mushrooms that REM sang about.
Yeah, and that ostensibly Tim runs into later.
Oh yeah. Oh, there we go. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
he totally does. Yeah, but she's just kind of like laughing and dancing. Her laugh sounds like a bell. She is, buck naked, and then just kind of luring him further and deeper into the forest.
Yeah, and Tim is into it because he is on the cusp of puberty, and she might be tiny, but she is, as you say, very naked.
Yes. And this kind of escalates, right?
I was 11. I was 11 once. Yeah. I think I saw Titanic and was very into it.
Yes, you would have chased after her carrying a sketch pad.
Mm-hmm, totally. So I get it, and I am 31 now, and I also can totally see that she's totally just fucking with him. Like as soon as the scene starts, it's like, oh, this isn't going to end well, and then sure enough, ends poorly.
Yeah, as she leads him not just off the road, but into a swamp, into this area called the Faganard. Hopping kind of from island to island, like little hillock to hillock. They get further apart and smaller as they go along, until finally, she's beckoning him across a leap that he cannot make without resting on a stone. Turns out the stone is a dragon.
Hate when that happens.
It's just the worst when that happens. And I love how they specifically call it the irony that if Tim died to this, he would have died to the thing that to the made up thing that killed his dad.
Yeah.
And this begins something that leads me to believe that a part of this story is to communicate what it means to be a gunslinger, right? Because
totally.
Later on they talk about, like when you hold the gun, all the gun wants to do is shoot. And when you hold it, all you want to do is shoot. It is all of that. However, gunslingers, as has been established, they're not just, these cowboys or marshals, they're knights, they're diplomats, they're emissaries. And so throughout this entire story, we see Tim kind of getting himself into bumbling into bad situations and solving them through speech, through oath, through word, even through a little bit of deception. He only fires the gun once. Which
is good, because he's only that one shot is 25% of his total.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture.
Not he had a lot to run with.
No, especially since most of them he had to stuff inside of a loaf of bread to keep safe. Or no, did he? I was unclear on that because I was listening to the audiobook. Did he take bread and plug it into the barrels that he wasn't using, or did he take the bullets out? And
I thought he put the bullets into the loaf of bread to keep them dry.
Okay, and also to keep them tasty.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
For his evening snack of bullets.
Yes. He's a very tough boy. He's a very stout-hearted, tough, bullet-eating boy.
And that boy went on to become Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the way that he avoids being fried is basically by making an appeal to the dragon, saying, "Hey, this was a mistake. I didn't mean to wake you up, but I will not bother you again."
Yeah, and the dragon is, like, surprisingly cool about it. Like,
I think based on something that
for a dragon,
based on something that we learn later, I think the dragon is used to brokering deals with us, with us plebes, us lesser beings.
Yeah, and I do. One of my favorite fantasy tropes is animals that are more intelligent than they are able to convey to humans. Mm-hmm. And so I really like Stephen King, just like, yeah, you got this dragon. It's this giant, dangerous, fire-breathing, like a fucking dragon. And all it can do is roar and snarl and, like, it's this monster. But it's also, like, way smarter than you are. Mm-hmm. It can understand you. You can't understand it, but it can understand you. And you're probably not going to outsmart it if you try. No.
And, that imbalance, that just follows, right? Because it also holds all the cards.
Yeah. And that's just one of my favorite, like, nerdy little fantasy things. And it makes me happy seeing Stephen King just, like, like he clearly, like, knows and loves all this stuff and has all these little throwaway tropes and homages and stuff all over the place in this book.
Yeah, I'm way into it. So he reasons with the dragon, but that trick only works once, unfortunately. He cannot reason with the muty alligators that begin circling the island and closing in on him.
Right, because those are just monsters. Those are not smart.
Yep. So Tim is able to keep his composure. He's not Sterling Archer or whatever, but he understands that he's cornered, right? And this is where his braggadocious, like, devil may care, well, fuck it, I'm going to take them with me attitude comes out.
Yeah. Which is interesting in that it's a little bit Roland, a little bit Eddie Dean.
A little bit. I forget what he says, but, like, he even says, like, and if all these bullets are misfires, I'm going to turn the gun around and use it as a club until they bite my arm off.
Yep.
Proving that, like many of the gunslingers we've seen before, Tim has steel.
Yes. And and that's kind of this whole scene exists basically to just bring that out and show that it exists even to him.
Yeah. And really all he has to do is blow the head off of one of these alligators to get the rest of them to leave. And
yeah.
that is the single bullet that's fired.
And that's a trick that I think that'll work for anybody, I think.
Firing a gun so everybody else will run?
No, alligators, Cole.
Oh, yeah.
If you blow up one alligator, the rest will run away.
You set an example.
Yeah, I mean, I assume I don't know very much about alligators.
No. All that I know about alligators is that their mouths. What is it? They close them with great force, but they can't really open them. So you can
Yeah,
hold their mouths closed. But I think that's a trick. I think that's a trick that the Florida people spread out there, so that us Northerners will end up getting gator bit. I have to ask Jeremy about that actually.
yeah, that's probably a good idea. We should probably learn anything about alligators before giving alligator related advice on this fantasy book podcast.
Yeah, I just wonder if Jeremy trusts us enough to share his swamp knowledge.
Well, I mean, just tell him that we're starting a gator cast.
Yeah. I don't know. That seems like a lot of effort for very little payoff.
Bring him on as an expert, and then I don't really have an end game for that plan.
No.
Yeah, it really does seem like more effort than it's worth by a lot.
I can just read a Wikipedia page. It'll be fine.
So yeah, Tim blows up an alligator head, scares the others away, as it will. And he'd been hearing the laughing from the shore, or something that sounded like laughing, but then
he had
it
spectators.
stops. Yeah, and that blowing up the alligator head kind of shuts out the peanut gallery too.
A little bit. And he when he initially saw them, he's like, oh, they look like mud people, like like just us, like swamp golems or whatever, just some kind of horrible monsters, vaguely humanoid, but have like growths off of them or whatever. When they hear the gunshot, the laughter stops, and instead they start yelling the only word they know, the first word, the one that set the universe a spinning, Heil, because these are not mindless monsters. These used to be people. They're still people. Oops. No.
Cole.
a little non-mutant supremacist. I don't know what I'm. Yeah. No, I didn't mean to be so harsh to these guys. No, they think he's a gunslinger. They still have a bit of that church in them.
Mm-hmm. And my favorite part about this interaction is that once he realizes that they think he's a gunslinger, he just starts saying things that he heard, like this super fan that he used to know say.
It's like one of his coworkers or one of his dad's acquaintances who was just a real gunslinger fanboy.
Yeah, like he just starts saying shit that he's heard before. And it works.
Neil Bondsman, rise to your service and your sire.
It's like
Din.
It's basically like if you or I were put in that position, what we would say. And it's great. I love it. It's just such a goofy thing in such a decidedly not goofy setting.
Yeah. Well, I also love that it's not the child, it's not the kid who's like all in on the the lore of the gunslingers, right? It's the adult.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would expect, like, in this world, I imagine if I was in there, that is a fruitless pursuit to imagine what you would do in mid-world times. But you would imagine that little kids would be all about gunslingers the way that little kids would be all about dinosaurs.
Yeah. Or firefighters or whatever.
Yeah. Or dinosaur firefighters. They
Yeah,
fight dinosaur
especially-
fires.
Wait.
See, you thought I meant the other way.
Yeah, I did. No, I got it. I'm back.
Yep. So, but yeah, like, these are muties. They're also mute. They communicate entirely through pantomime. And they're not made of mud. They're not like just whatever elementals of the swamp. They're actually humans that are kind of merging and becoming one with the plant life. Like intermingled with stubble is like moss and stuff.
Yeah, it's like a whole race of people who are kind of like Hugh Jackman at the end of The Fountain.
I've never seen The Fountain.
That is a reference that like one person's going to get, and it's probably going to be me when I listen back to this episode.
I know exactly what movie you're talking about. Was that directed by Tarsem?
I think so.
I'm
it's
thinking
a
of
very
The Fall.
weird, very artsy movie with Rachel Weisz, I think, is the other lead in it.
Okay.
It's very weird, and it follows like a whole bunch of different like
Yeah.
semi-parallel timelines about the Fountain of Youth. And at one point, Hugh Jackman accidentally starts turning into a tree, I think.
Okay.
And he's very, very cross about it.
Huh. No, it was directed by Darren Aronofsky.
Aronofsky, that's right.
When I said Tarsem, I was thinking of The Fall, or thinking this is what he did along with The Fall.
Yeah, it is not dissimilar in tone from The Fall.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it's a very polarizing movie. It's one of my favorites, and it is a movie that a number of my friends have said is the worst thing they've ever watched, and the only movie they've ever walked out of.
Oh, well, that's a mean thing to say, especially if they know you really like it.
Well, usually they don't.
Okay.
But
yeah,
it's a weird one.
Yeah, but it's like a whole tribe that has been swamp thinged.
Yeah, that's a much better and more palatable analogy.
But like it's not just that they have little plant growths coming off of them; they are also host to any number of pustules and things like that. One of the most sickening passages in this series, I think, kind of actually evokes Gasher a little bit, like how Gasher would just have, pus. I was about to say like pus bullets blow up on him, and then he would like scoop out the stuff and eat it or whatever. While one of them's talking, like a sore opens up above his nipple on his chest, and it just blurps out a bunch of stuff. Guy reaches in, grabs a spider out of it, flicks it off to the side, then reaches in and grabs the eggs so they don't hatch.
Yeah.
And this seems to be a common affliction among these people.
Yeah, and the action's described as just in a very casual manner.
Oh, he's just doing it while he's talking or while he's communicating. Yeah,
like it doesn't even phase the guy, and it's like it is it's upsetting.
Yeah, and Tim is
upset by it.
He's trying not to throw up. And I don't know that this rises to the level of like an actual phobia, but the word for this is trypophobia, the fear of holes in things. Mm-hmm. So like lotus pods or like the Suriname toad or whatever.
It's a
like
very real thing.
Yeah, like it's not like I did a Google search for that term. I just did a search because I didn't know what it was called. It brought up a bunch of images. If I actually had a phobia, I would not be functioning right now. It's very unpleasant, and I've never met somebody who's like, "Oh, that's cool."
Yeah, like it doesn't get to me that bad, but it still gets me. It's
it makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, so let's move on from that then. These very nice people.
They're very nice, and it turns out that, even though they communicate by pantomime, they're actually reading Tim's thoughts, so they know he's not a gunslinger, but they're still willing to help him.
My read on that was that they were willing to help him because he treated them with respect and dignity and kind of basic decency,
right?
Which I imagine that they probably don't get a lot of visitors, and of the ones that they do, they probably don't get a lot of that.
Yeah. And last episode, we spent a little bit of time talking about how much this fairy tale kind of stands in contrast to a lot of what happens in the Dark Tower, showing that, as the world has moved on, things have gotten less hospitable, outside of, certain things like the town they find before they get to Lud or whatever, like seeing scenes of the people of Tree, taking care of Nell and Tim and, gathering up to go hunt down Kells, like all of that, again, stands in contrast and is really heartening to see. This is very much of that same stripe. It is good to see that, they are just people, and they are willing to help and be generous and continue even going through the motions of this ritual of offering tribute to the gunslingers, even though it's a bit of a sham, right?
So yeah, Tim asks them about Merlin, and they know what he's talking about, even if they can't really clearly communicate an answer to him.
Yeah.
And the answer that they give is basically like, yeah, we know that guy. And then they start like crawling around like dogs and growling.
Yep. No, doing roars, swiping at the air in front of them.
Yeah,
with their imaginary claws.
And at first, I assumed that they were like pantomiming. At first, it seemed like dogs, and so then it seemed I assumed that it was Billy Bumblers, and then
that could say.
Yeah, but it doesn't really make it. It seemed like a very strange response, but it makes a little more sense when you get a little further on.
Yeah. When you see the fullness, like oh, they're telling the truth.
Yeah. Oh, this is what they meant.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what the cover of this book means. Okay. Yeah. And then also, they, when he says like, yeah, I'm part of my quest is to go find him. They basically clean out their pantries for him. They assemble a bag of food for him, and they give him something that you don't expect to see in a fairy tale. Like,
yeah, it's an Amazon Echo.
Yep. It is an
basically
it is an AI voice assistant from our good old friends at North Central Positronics.
Yep.
Old NCP. And yeah, it's also a GPS. Like, they produced this disc. It's far denser than it ought to be. And it has a light that kind of points in the same direction no matter which way they turn. So he intuits that, yeah, this must be some kind of compass. Thinking, okay, it's pointing north, but actually no, it's taking him along the path of the beam.
Because, all things serve.
Absolutely. Especially in the story.
Well, mostly there, I guess.
Oh yeah. I'm operating under, not under a theory, but every time I see all things serve the beam is really just kind of like a big metaphor stand-in for the idea of like, oh yes, all things serve the direction that the story must go. That's what I'm referring to. I don't expect it to anybody to find that profound, but that is just a theme that I'm noticing, especially as we get into the section of the series, the back half that is utterly obsessed with fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets some might argue a little too self-aware.
I will not. I don't know.
I didn't say I would, but if someone did, I'd have a hard time arguing against it.
Yeah, true. I'm probably staking out that position way too strongly, way too early. So I rescind my I do not and say we're headed there. We'll talk about it when we see it. Boy, yeah. Will we.
So yeah, they give him all this stuff and they basically send him on his way. Like they get him in a boat and they take him to the far end of the swamp. And as he leaves, they kind of tell him to watch, and they kind of impress on him that it's extremely important. And they turn around in circles and then face north and bark.
Yes.
And then, if someone told me to watch because it's important and then did that, it would mean about as much to me as it meant to Tim.
I would get a little bit angry. It'd be a little bit like somebody saying, like, lean in here, I've got a secret for you. Then they just belch in your face.
Yeah. Yeah. But then they follow that hilarious joke up by letting him know that they're all going to die very soon.
Yeah, because Tim being a good kid, he says, oh, when I pass back through, I'll give you this disc back. I'll give you back your compass. And they're like, no, this is pretty much the end of the road.
Yeah, which, it makes sense. That makes more sense why they're willing to help and to give him basically everything they have.
Yeah. Including sweet, sweet berries.
So yeah, that's kind of a very jarring, a
little bit of whiplash.
Yeah, just absurdity to tragedy very fast.
Yeah. And it's it is an upsetting fact. You think, oh well, these it is sad that these people are going to die. It's heightened by Tim keeping a strong face in front of them, but when he walks away, when he leaves, breaking down crying. You know, like that sucks. These people who saved his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he as he continues on past there, he like stumbles and accidentally dumps the basket of food, and he's like frustrated because it's dark and figures he's going to be spending all night, and then all of a sudden someone asks if he wants some light.
Yeah. Hey.
And he
what?
loses his shit because he's in the middle of the woods at night with no one around.
Right. You know, he thinks maybe it's the Covenant Man. He thinks maybe it's somebody coming to hurt him. You know, he's in the middle of something that is literally called the Endless Forest. And still this strange woman's voice comes out of nowhere. And this thing lights up like a beacon. And like we said, you know, this disc isn't just a compass. It's an Echo. It's a Google Home. And we have to be very careful not to trigger people's machines when we talk here.
Yeah.
So we do not say the A name.
No.
No.
I'm actually sitting next to one right now, so that would not go well.
I'm sitting next to one, but it's muted. Wait a minute. Hey, Evan.
Yeah.
Why do we let these things into our house?
I don't know. Because they're very fun, and you can play Jeopardy on them. And if you forget to turn off your lights, you can tell them to do it for you.
Yeah, that's the big one. Okay.
Yeah.
I think they're gone now, so we can talk. Yeah, boy, this fairy tale sure is good, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, this is, this voice assistant is named Daria. And she lights us up. You know, Tim asks her, like, hey, how long is this going to last? Oh, the battery will last 70 years, give or take 2 years.
And his reaction is 70 years. That should be enough time.
When his reaction should have been, what's a battery?
Well, you know, at this point, I feel like Tim's just kind of resigned himself to the fact that none of this makes any sense anyway.
Oh, yeah. And it never will.
Yeah. And so right around here, there's a point where he's kind of examining it, and he sees a button, and he wants to press it to see what's going to happen. And there's a passage that says he hears in his head the voice of the widow Smack telling him not to do it. And that jumped out at me because the past, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks, my girlfriend has been getting me into professional wrestling.
Okay.
Which is something that I have basically no history with, but it's really fun. And it's kind of, been on my mind lately. I've been like kind of learning about all the different storylines and different elements going into it. And I saw that, and all that I could think of was, man, if I was a wrestler, I'd want to have a move called Voice of the Widow Smack.
Or would you be some kind of heel who went around smacking widows?
Or it would be a smack coming from a widow. I didn't really think it through very well, Cole. Remember the part where I told you it's been like 3 weeks? I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the widow smack definitely does sound like some kind of it sounds like a special move in a Yakuza game.
Yeah, like something, or something that you'd see in like a Suda 51 game. Yeah.
Oh,
it's just one of those really, just really, really special combinations of words.
Oh yeah, like just a magical incantation that existed, but we uncovered, we found.
Yeah. So he pushes the button despite knowing that wiser people would probably tell him not to.
Yeah, he armed the bomb.
Yeah, and so he starts to kind of learn about this voice assistant, Daria, and yeah, she's made by North Central Positronics because, of course, she is, because everything in every part of every world is somehow connected to North Central Positronics.
Yep.
And then there are some questions that, like when she starts to get close to certain subjects, she can't talk about them and references a directive. Which directive? Oh, yeah. Directive 19.
Right. Because if there's going to be a number, it has to be 19. We haven't encountered this yet. This is kind of our This is, retconning in an earlier mention of something that is going to be very important in the back half of the series. But Directive 19 is like a lock that has been placed on her and her database that stops her from talking about particular subjects that would be especially useful to the protagonist.
Yeah, basically. And that's, it's kind of a neat, I was going to say throwback because this was written so far after the second half of the series, but it's also foreshadowing because chronologically it takes place before.
Yeah. And
throw shadowing. Foreback.
Foreback, yes.
Foreback sounds
ominous.
Anatomically unpleasant.
And so this introduces a little bit of like dissonance, I think, and I can see this being levied as a criticism of this kind of new order of reading the books, which is like, oh, Directive 19, it's in the story that Roland has heard his entire life. When it comes up later, he should know, oh, it's like that in the story, but he doesn't. And there are other details that are like that. Like there is some very important information that is revealed later on that would be very useful for them to know.
Yeah, it did get pretty specific.
Yes.
To the point where it kind of, I had to suspend my already thoroughly suspended disbelief. Just because there's some stuff that is, if Roland actually knew this story his whole life, the series would be much shorter.
Yes. He would definitely know not to take the Covenant Man at his word. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Like it is a bad side effect of kind of inserting this in here, but I think that's worth the price. That price of admission is worth it.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, but it still works.
Yeah,
and especially if you kind of read the story as, okay, like this is the full unabridged story. It's not necessarily what Roland is telling verbatim. Like Roland is telling the story that he knows or the parts he remembers.
Yes.
But what we are getting is the complete original story, including all the details that have been lost by the time it got to Roland.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can live with that.
Because it kind of the chapter before it starts and after it ends, it's you get like the Roland sentence, but then this isn't told through Roland's voice.
Yeah, this isn't all in quotes.
Yeah. So that was kind of how I was able to square it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can live with that. But this is a little bit heartwarming. You would think that because this is an AI made by North Central Positronics, the last one of those we saw definitely killed a whole city of people. Speaking about about Blaine, Daria though is a solid bro. She never misguides him, never like plays with him, is helpful, and even being fully aware that Directive 19 exists, she brushes up against that and reveals more information than she ought to. That ultimately is her undoing, but like Tim, probably anthropomorphizing her, but who knows if that's the case, kind of concludes that she was lonely. She wanted somebody to talk to.
And he also kind of characterizes her as he goes on as a good fairy, as the counter to Armanita.
Yes.
Which it's a very brief relationship between Tim and this AI, but it's very sweet in a strange sort of way.
Yeah. It is, and she like saves his life. Like this enters this section of the story where it's like a 50-mile journey through the woods where she guides him. She takes him to like scenic overlooks. She keeps him away from those poisonous mushrooms that even getting the spores on the skin would kill him.
Yeah, he asks, "Are those good to eat?" And she says, "No. Even brushing up against them and getting spores on your skin will cause you to die of seizures."
Wait a minute. Did you look at them? Yes, I looked at them. Oh boy, watch your eyes out. Get to the eye wash station. Oh, this is a forest, not a high school chemistry lab? Well, shit. Yeah. Um,
Um, yeah, so they're on their way to a Dogan,
yep, the
because again,
North
sure,
the North Forest Kinnock Dogan, which is offline. We'll talk about that when we get there. Just understand that it's like a facility, right?
yeah, yeah, some kind of a technologically based facility of sorts.
Yes.
Um,
Um,
and there's a lot of magic, and he asks if it's light or dark magic, and the answer after a long pause is both, which
okay.
thanks, but it actually does make a lot of sense once you get there.
Yeah.
And then it finds out that they're on the beam of the lion, which is the opposite of, not the opposite, but the other side of the beam of the bird.
Yep.
And so they're on the lion side of that particular beam, and the lion is Aslan, which is, just kind of a nice little nod to literary fiction.
Yeah. Just like Shardik was pulled from a different story.
Yeah. So there's, that pretty much all of the Guardians of the Beam are from other works of fiction, which is, that's just kind of a neat thing, and it's neat to see Stephen King kind of just leaning into that.
Yeah, he's paying homage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget what Maturin is taken from. Allusions. Maturin is a reference to Stephen Maturin, a naturalist from a series of novels by Patrick O'Brien. That's the name of the turtle. We're gonna get there later, but I wanted to check that and process that out loud.
Yeah. I had never checked that out. There was a part of me that didn't want to look, because I knew it wouldn't be, but I was always really hoping that it was somehow a Terry Pratchett Discworld reference.
Yeah, that would be very tidy, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But can't have everything.
Nope. Yeah. But this kind of gets us to this journey, them traveling here. During one of the nights, though, Tim is awakened by these 6 Billy Bumblers who are doing their dance, right? And he puts it together. He understands what the Widow Smack was talking about, and by specifically wording his query to get past Directive 19, understands that they're freaking out and doing their dance because the Stark Blast is coming. And we get a good description of what the Stark Blast is. Like, this is unnecessary detail, but there's like a long passage that talks about how the high and low pressure systems are kind of like enter into a feedback cycle along the beam, and the idea that like the storm found the beam and the beam was pleased. And so the idea that they travel along this and are like fed, fed by this attraction and just kind of like shot toward the center or towards the edge.
Which also explains why they're so rare, because only places that are directly along the beam would experience them.
Yeah.
It also explains why the main quartet that we're following 2 stories out from this one.
Yeah.
Why they run into one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So along this path, they also have to cross this massive chasm. It's like 1,000-foot chasm over this narrow rock bridge. And of course, when they're halfway over, a tentacle monster starts attacking.
I'm going to be really honest. I thought that was unnecessary at best.
I am fine with them leaning in, with him leaning into how alien and strange this is, if only for just the mind painting that occurred, as he was talking about this, blood red waterfall that was off in the distance over top of, beyond this chasm, and kind of the muty life that hooked below, or that, thrives below. It is unnecessary. It does kind of harm the pacing. It's ultimately a peril that doesn't lead anywhere, but I am A-okay with some Midworld as an alien place detail.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's not like it adds a ton of bulk to the book, but
Yeah.
I just got to that and I was just like, okay, really?
Yeah. Oh, but
But
it's ultimately a small distraction.
yeah. Um, so he finally gets to the Dogan after he gets across this bridge, and it's like a squat little building with a giant radar antenna right by a big old cliff,
Yeah.
and um, he can basically see not the not really the storm, but the wind on the edge of the storm,
Mm-hmm.
um, just off the cliff.
Right. It's like it's basically it is trapped and roiling within this 100-mile expanse that the cliff kind of abuts. Right.
Yeah,
And it even sees like this wind is whipping around like tree limbs and also dead birds
yeah,
as well. Just the sheer frenzy of this wind is something to behold. This whole scene is described like it's a node in a text adventure. To your right, you see a Dogan. To the north, you see you see a cliff and a cage. Examine cage. What's in cage? Cage has tiger. The tiger is pacing and has a key and a card attached to its collar.
Yep. Great big tiger walking around in a cage.
Tiger, which is not a common sight around here. It's basically a mythological beast.
Yeah. And there's some seemingly useful things on a collar on the tiger, so immediately making them less immediately useful.
Yeah.
And then he starts hearing the booms that we already kind of have heard about earlier in the book, and he learns from Daria that it's the trees. Was it imploding or exploding or kind of both?
She says imploding. I could believe either. I'm not exactly sure what the more accurate word would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going on. So the storm is like right there.
Yeah.
And then
time is definitely of the essence, and he's held.
Yeah.
Like he is basically broken from the trance by Daria saying, "Here comes the boom." I'm sorry. See, like you talked about how you come up with dumb jokes. I also come up with dumb jokes. Yeah. But they have to get into the Dogan. They have to, find some kind of shelter. They go to the door. The door has a box by it, which and it also has like a place for a card key to go and a keyhole that is shaped like a symbol of the old speech, the high speech. And there's a note here from the Covenant Man. It is signed by RF or MB, Randall Flagg or Man in Black, right?
Well, I assume Randall Flagg or Martin Broadcloak.
Oh yeah, that actually makes more sense.
Yeah, I initially read it as Man in Black also, but then I remembered that that would be a weird way to initial a note.
Right. It definitely would, especially because he is dressed in black, so that might actually make a little bit of sense. But yes, MB makes sense. I forgot that was one of his many names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the note basically tells him that the keys to the door are on the tiger. Tiger's very hungry. The key was with the note is the key to the tiger's cage. Your move, kid.
Yep. Are you going to dare to go in and face the tiger to get the key so you can live? Right.
At this point or shortly before it, Daria disregards Directive 19 and tells him flat out that the tiger is the source of all the magic that she was picking up.
Yeah.
And at that point, there's more louder clicking, and then she starts to say, "You are my friend," and then there's like a clunk and smoke starts coming out, and it's just like, oh.
Yep, she self-terminated with one final act of selflessness.
Yeah,
helping him out and giving him kind of like the piece of information that saves his life.
Yeah, because with knowing that, Tim initially thinks that he has to shoot the tiger, but then he thinks about who he's dealing with, that the Covenant man would have known that he would get there and would have known that he would have a gun and would have known that he would probably try to shoot the tiger so that he could get into the building and survive and continue on his journey to help his mother. And knowing that the Covenant man would know that, he doesn't do it.
He decides not to play into his hands, not to follow the predicted path, which
so
before had led him to ruin, and now he doesn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, so he basically unlocks the cage and then tells like logics with a tiger, which if you are ever face to face with a tiger, my understanding is that is not a reliably successful course of action.
I've seen a lot of gifs of people like going up and like petting tigers and scratching under their chins and them purring and stuff.
Yeah, but how many gifs have you seen of tigers responding to logic?
Few.
Yeah,
scratches aren't logic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's like I always say.
Scratches aren't logic. Yeah, I've got that. It's a needlepoint sampler above my bed. Yeah. No, so he pulls it off and says, talks to the tiger, basically tries to do the same thing he did with the dragon, right? Saying, hey, I need those keys. If you eat me, we both die. And
this dragon, which had been described, as I think troublesome and hungry, is actually super chill.
Oh, the tiger?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is an especially chill and uncharacteristically logical tiger.
Because he presents his neck, so the collar can be taken off. The collar's been on there for so long that like the fur beneath it has been worn away. He just has a band of pink below it.
Yeah. So he gets the collar off and they run over to the building, but as mentioned earlier, the Dogen is offline, and so the key card won't work. The door won't let them in, and he realized that was the Covenant man's practical joke on him.
The final trick.
Hilarious. Very, very, very funny.
Bravo. We're going to send that one into Prank Magazine. Yeah. It sucks because Tim did the right thing. You would think that he had outsmarted him, but no, this is the Covenant man. He's working, kind of on a different level. He even had the fail safe there. The door was never going to open.
Yeah. But there's the key, which opens a box that has a glass bottle and one feather and a cloth napkin, which, very, very helpful stuff.
It's basically like that Ben Affleck movie, The Paycheck.
Ooh.
based off of a pretty good Philip K. Dick short story, actually.
It is. That is. I don't know if I've heard
anybody talk about that movie ever.
Well, I don't know if I've heard anybody talk about Paycheck starring Ben Affleck ever. But also that is maybe the deepest cut Affleck without Damon reference that I've heard in a very long time.
Yeah, it was back kind of in his salad days. It was right around the time he was tapped to play Jack Ryan in The Sum of All Fears. It is I, your resident Affleckologist. But it turns out he's a piece of shit, so whatever.
Yeah.
For the purpose of that joke, I didn't for the purpose of that joke, it's 2015. Yeah.
Gigli, right?
Yep. So
that's still a joke.
Yeah. I mean, the movie still exists, so it's still a joke. But yes, he's got this kind of assemblage of seemingly useless, unconnected, random objects.
Yeah, but in a twist that should not be surprising at this point, shit's magic. Mm-hmm. And the tiger picks up the teeny tiny cloth, and it unfolds over and over and over again into something that is eventually the size of like a ship's sail.
Yeah, they basically make themselves a makeshift magic yurt. in which to spend the night.
Yeah, and it is also completely storm-proof.
Yes. Anything beneath this magic cloth, which I think is called, not the Dybbuk, that's like a weird ghost, like baby ghost thing. There's a specific name for this. Anything beneath this cloth is untouched by the winds, right?
Yeah, Dibbin,
there we go.
Yeah. So he and this tiger just kind of snuggle up under this big old blanket thing.
They do. It seems so cozy.
It really kind of makes me want a tiger. I know I said earlier I was a little bit critical of this book's presentation of tigers, but I'm rethinking my stance because it does seem like snuggling up next to a tiger under a great big blanket while there's a big storm going on outside would be very nice.
See, the thing is, he's got to purr. If he doesn't purr, there's no deal.
Oh yeah, if the tiger doesn't purr, it's like that song. If that tiger doesn't purr, Mama's gonna make that tiger purr.
Yep. I've got that again. That's another needlepoint sampler. It's right below scratches, and scratches aren't logic.
Yeah. You have a lot of needlepoint samplers.
It's good to have hobbies.
That's true.
Yeah. I only have one. It's the name of it is a needlepoint version of an episode title for the level. I do. I actually have one. It's Forget It, Jake. It's just a turtle. Dennis got it for me for Christmas one year.
I was really hoping that you were going to say it was an episode title for, and then like some weird TV show.
The Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, or like
Huggy Bear Rides Again. I don't know that that's an actual thing. I made a Starsky and Hutch reference at work the other day, and I got nothing but blank stares.
Well, I mean, we've already this has been long established that you are Unstuck in Time RE television programming.
True. I thought that the remake with what's their names, Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson would have given that one some extension. I thought that would have been a signal repeater.
Yeah, it really never caught on, which is a shame because it's actually very funny. And also Harmar Superstar has a dance scene in it, which is terrific.
Yeah. I've never seen it. I know it exists.
It is genuinely worth watching if you need a very stupid movie to laugh at, and or just haven't seen Harmar Superstar do a thing for a bit.
I'll take that under advisement. But yeah, they've got this super cozy night.
And it sounds great.
When Tim thinks back to this, he says, he wasn't scared, even though it should have been a terrifying situation. He basically recalls it as probably the safest he's ever felt. And this is where the name of the story and the name of the book come from, is Tim kind of musing on the nature of this experience, right? I'll just read the quote and we can interpret it or let it be, depending on what we want to do. Saying, "Time is a keyhole," he thought as he looked up at the stars. "Yes, I think so. We sometimes bend and peer through it, and the wind we feel in our cheeks when we do, the wind that blows through the keyhole, is the breath of all the living universe." Yeah.
Which sounds very profound until I remember the shit that I would kind of muse upon when I was 11. And then you think about it and it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah. I don't know that I could take this and extrapolate onto it like a greater significance even within the course of the story.
Yeah, like I don't. You kind of mentioned this earlier, but the title of the story and the title of the book, like I don't even know what the keyhole's a metaphor for.
Right.
Like I don't totally get it.
Yeah.
It seems like Stephen King had this cool idea for a name, and then wrote a book and was like, oh fuck, why is it called this? Here we go.
The best that I can think of is it is a bit of a meditation on the idea that our experience and perception are so limited, and when we get up to the kind of threshold of the edge of that, and see something as ridiculous as what Tim is in right now, and you see kind of the danger or the chaos that is beyond the perception, like that is what you feel is the disparity between everything and kind of like your limited point of view from inside that, from inside whatever that keyhole is between you.
And there's a lot of that sentiment all throughout this series.
Yes.
The keyhole metaphor is not particularly germane to anything.
I will give you that. I'm definitely stretching. That's just the best that I can make of it.
Yeah. No. You are not wrong, but
yeah.
So yeah, and then also he falls asleep, has a dream about the tower, and decides I'm gonna go there.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
If all of this is true, then the tower has to be true as well.
Yeah, and everyone else who sets out to go there, it works out extremely well.
for at least one of them.
There's you don't hear about any hardship.
No.
So yeah, they wake up the next morning.
They share Popkins.
The tiger reminds him that he still has 2 sandwiches left, and so they have a nice sandwich break. And then the tiger kind of pantomimes. Is that the right word when you're talking about an animal?
Yeah, I would say
that. Is there another
word
for it?
I think that he starts pawing at the glass bottle of medicine.
Yeah, he indicates that Tim should give him the liquid that's in the bottle.
Yeah. And then we get the second most horrifying thing in this book after the spider crawling out of that person's body. And
I just want to call out right now in the show notes, you have you have used the verb to anamorph.
Yeah. If you conjugate that, he anamorphed, they anamorph. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes it sound so much cooler and more pleasant than it is in the book.
I mean, the Animorphs books, they describe it in very horrifying fashion. They definitely talk about feeling their bones rearrange.
Yeah, no, actually reading those books, there's like a significant amount of body horror in that young adult novel series from the 90s.
Yeah.
But
I just took a whole bunch of those to the Goodwill, actually. I still had a bunch of mine around.
Man.
That's the reason why I had Animorphs on the mind.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is absolutely horrifying. Because it's like if Stephen King wrote an Animorphs transformation sequence.
So this goes on for
literally what this is.
It goes on for like a page. So what I have written here, he gives
into such excruciating detail.
Talks about the tail going away, coming back, and going away. Talks about him rearing back and his rear paws turning into boots. Like it's real.
It's not a clean process.
No, it looks painful. With the way I have it written here, he anamorphs from tiger into the form of Merlin. It turns out, and this isn't any great surprise given what Daria said, but this tiger is, a polymorphed version of Merlin, the great wizard from the time of Eld, right?
Yeah. And he tells Tim to save what's left in the bottle for his mother's eyes. It'll cure her blindness. And then Tim asks him, how did you get into that predicament? And we find out Merlin got drunk.
Yep. Well, he's super reluctant to actually share this, right? Because Tim says, "Wait, did the Covenant man do this to you?" No. It was definitely somebody more powerful than him for sure. I'm a real badass, and everybody's afraid of me. Just turns out I was drunk.
Yeah.
And the idea that most of the myths of Merlin is very powerful. The myth about him living backward in time isn't true. He doesn't live in a house that is separated from time. He lives in a small little hut. He basically lives like an ascetic, right?
Yeah. And he makes a really interesting point just about the nature of legend and folklore, which is if you went home and told all your friends that I don't live backward in time, would they believe you?
Yeah.
Or if you told your friends that I live like a monk in a hut or a cave, would they believe you?
Yeah.
And Tim thinks about it and is like, no, they probably wouldn't.
Yeah. So
like legends are what they are.
I'll be over here.
Damned.
I'll be over here eating spaceman paninis with Black Hitler. That's a community reference to basically the same idea.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't watched Community in way too long.
I just did a rewatch. It's still very good.
Yeah. So yeah, this is kind of where we get to the point where I became less convinced that the Covenant Man was the Man in Black, because Merlin's talking about the Crimson King, and Tim asks, "Oh, like, was he the one that trapped you here?" And it's like, "Oh no, he can't trap anyone. He's trapped in the tower himself.
He's pent at the top of the tower."
Yeah, but he has these emissaries, and the Covenant Man is not his most powerful. And I, clearly from the note, like the note was left by Randall Flagg.
Mm-hmm.
And so ostensibly Randall Flagg is the one who transformed Merlin into the tiger.
So I can understand that. Where I think that falls down is the idea that if it wasn't Randall Flagg that transformed Merlin into the tiger, Randall Flagg probably knew about the situation and decided to use it to create havoc, right? Because he goes on to say, you're talking about this, like, Randall Flagg is going to be punished for what he has done because his little trick there was not. I'll just read the quote here. "Little magic and long life is all he's capable of. No, Tim, there's one far greater than he of the broad cloak. When the great one points his finger from where he bides, the broad cloak scurries. But sending you was none of the Red King's bidding, and the one you call the Covenant Man will pay for his foolery, I'm sure. He's too valuable to kill, but to hurt, to punish, I think so. So I think the Crimson King had Merlin transformed, and the Covenant Man, Randall Flagg, Martin Broadcloak, whatever you want to call him, fucked it up by kind of pursuing his own little course of action."
Yeah, that makes sense, and that was kind of my initial read on it also.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that just the characterization of the Covenant Man seems different from the way that the Man in Black is characterized elsewhere in the series, and I guess that makes a degree of sense because he would be much younger at this point than at any other point in the story.
Mm-hmm. So it's a different telling too.
Yeah, but I guess I just feel like I get that he is an agent of chaos. That's kind of his character archetype, but the whole tax collector bit doesn't seem like him. And so I kind of I wasn't really sure even from the beginning of the book if the Covenant Man was the same person or if he was just kind of this of the same ilk.
Yeah.
There's one far greater than he of the broad cloak. When the great one points his finger, the broad cloak scurries. I guess that just kind of depends. Is the great one, is that the Crimson King, or is that someone in between the king and the Man in Black?
I definitely believe it's the Crimson King is who he's talking about. And I think that it lines up, the idea that Martin Broadcloak, man, it's really hard to refer to this thing that has many, many names. I think that it lines up for me that he basically talks a big game and is powerful, like in the scheme of, the regular people who interact with him, but in comparison to the Crimson King or the other forces that he can bring to bear, or to muster, that he is all talk in relation to them and kind of gets around by scheming and falling on the wrong side of people.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. I'm pretty thoroughly convinced that it's the Covenant Man, or that the
Yeah.
Covenant Man is Randall Flagg.
Yeah, no, I think that you have convinced me at this point.
Yeah. And if there's a compelling case to be made against that, I will happily hear that. In addition to what you have said, if there's something that I'm not seeing, definitely if you're listening, write in and let me know.
Yeah. Twitter, or if you're on the Duckfeed Slack, or however.
Yeah, use the contact form. Any of those.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a contact form on the website.
Yeah. Yeah, and any of those. I just it in a way it's a little bit too neat if it is the exact same guy. It just that there's so many other things that line up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, Merlin gives Tim a little bit of foreshadowing that doesn't really matter, but spoilers, Tim's going to be a gunslinger.
Yep. He points to the gun on Tim's belt and says, that isn't the only gun that you're going to carry. And nor is it the heaviest. You're going to, probably live in tree for a little while longer. But it is your fate to be a gunslinger. And also, Merlin's tired. He wants to get back to his cave, see if it's been ransacked, I think. So see if he still has any of his booze left. But he has two very specific instructions for Tim for when he gets home, saying, first, administer the droplets to your mom, and be positive that you give your mom your father's axe.
And Tim asks why, and all of a sudden Merlin gets very stern and basically says, don't ask questions.
He has his own Directive 19.
I couldn't tell if that was Directive 19 or if it was like, all right, I'm fucking done with you, kid.
Why would you question me?
Yeah, just fucking do it. I've been a tiger. Just fucking leave me alone.
Do you see that hole I had to shit in?
Thanks.
It was
thanks
almost
for the sandwich.
full. Yeah.
Thanks for the sandwich. I'm gonna go back to my booze cave. Fuck off. Take this magic feather and fuck right off. So yeah, the magic feather turns the magic cloth into a magic carpet, basically, and he gives him the feather and says, "Okay, now go fly home." And Tim asks, "How do you do that?" And Merlin's response is, "How do you walk?
Think.
Just think of home." And that's not how I would describe how I walk.
Yeah.
Like, if I just think of home, then I can do that while I'm walking.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking of home, like, I'm doing it right now, and I'm definitely still sitting.
Hey,
so I feel like that. Yes,
I thought of home, and I'm actually back up in Mansfield, Ohio now.
Whoa!
I'm not sure how the Skype call wasn't interrupted, but I'm here.
Man. Yeah. Kudos to Skype on their technological advances in the past
5 minutes.
Yeah, very short.
I take back every bad thing I've ever said about your platform. Yeah, but so basically does the whole Wizard of Oz thing down to even the reference, right?
Yeah,
like just some wise man long ago.
Like home.
Yeah, wise person long ago said there's no place.
Someone famous for something or other.
And so this begins his magic carpet ride, back over the forest. Yeah, much shorter than his initial. Than his initial trek out. He is saddened to see that the swamp has been completely frozen over. And he describes it as like a yellowed cataract.
Yeah. And he's obviously like terrified that the same thing happened to his home, but it kind of seems like it stopped just shy of where the town starts.
Yeah, but like the slash pulled up as it neared tree.
Yeah, so like they definitely got some damage from the storm, but they're fine.
Yeah. And so he arrives.
And he goes to the widow's house, which is where his mom has been staying. Is that right?
I forget exactly whose house it is, but he initially thinks like, "Oh my gosh, they've left my mom alone. This isn't how you neighbor. That's not what you do." But he is relieved and like a little bit even like heartbroken that the widow Smack even stayed by her side through that, right?
Yeah. So he puts the drops in her eyes and her sight comes back, and that's great. And then he remembers the Merlin thing and my axe.
Mm-hmm.
And so doesn't know why, just gives it to her. And then goes to make breakfast.
The scene of her like initially like being angry, like berating him for leaving. How could you do this? I can't believe you. I can't believe you've done this. But then the contrast between that and her just being unable to stop from hugging and kissing him. Just the relief that she has. The first thing that she sees when she gets her sight back is his face. It's super sweet.
It really is.
Yeah. But yes, and he says, "Hey, I'm going to go make us some breakfast." Yeah.
And so he goes to wake up the widow, and
she cut.
Yeah. She is super duper dead.
Yes. And he goes to wake her up and sees that, there's blood on the front of her, on the front of her chest. Her throat's been slit from ear to ear.
Yeah. And then Byrne Kells, his monster of a stepfather,
his wicked stepdad,
basically like chokeslams him against the wall.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, releases him, and his head had sprouted an axe handle.
I love the way that King wrote that.
Yeah.
Because that is why Merlin had told Tim to give his mom the axe, knowing that this exact situation would pan out. Nell had gone up behind and, plunged the axe into the right side of his head, getting her final one-liner in, again, referring to like back in the first part of this, saying like, once you've slipped the rope, you'd slip for life or whatever. And as she kills him, she said, she screams at him, "I cut the rope so, Cherry Man." It's like, yes. Yeah. Good on you, Nell.
Yeah. He turns around, and then she says that, and then he eats it, and it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
And then
that's pretty much it.
That's basically, Tim and his mom, they're okay. They arrange for the funeral service for the widow, and the whole town comes out to pay their respects. And Tim lives in tree for a while, and then some gunslingers come through and looking for people to help, and he's the only one that'll go along. And then
that's how he enters the life.
Yeah. And that is it.
That is the win through the keyhole, as Tim Ross becomes Tim Stoutheart. And
and that's the win through the keyhole. That's the story, The Win Through the Keyhole, from the book The Win Through the Keyhole. We're going to be finishing the book The Win Through the Keyhole next time.
This is the title track off of the album that is named after the band.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the song Pennywise from the album Pennywise by the band Pennywise, named after the clown Pennywise by Stephen King.
I was thinking see, that is much more relevant. I was going for more of a Wilco thing.
Yeah, that was where my head went initially, and then
no, it was a good turn you took there.
Yeah. I went through like a skate punk phase when I was 13.
I definitely played that skateboarding arcade game that had the song by Pennywise as the first track.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2?
No, it was an arcade game where you rode. It was like one of those big installation ones where you had
I know what you're talking about.
The skateboard that you stood on.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep. No, I played a lot of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and that was how I got exposed to like Pennywise and Bad Religion and Bouncing Souls and a whole bunch of really, really fun punk music from like the mid to late 90s, early 2000s.
It's good stuff. Yeah.
Even though I know nothing about skateboarding and can't do it myself.
Nope. I know about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater version of skateboarding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the end of the fairy tale, and that's the end of this episode about this section of the book. The next episode, we're going to finish out the entire book. We're going to do the very end. It's going to be a shorter episode because that's a shorter section of the book. Again, this is a very strange book to pace out. So shrugs. Anyway, it'll probably be a lot of kind of reflection on the book itself. And about kind of its place as a new Dark Tower book written after everything else, but inserted in the middle.
Yeah, and if we come up short on time, then we can, just talk about the Dark Tower movie a little bit more.
Oh God, I'm so done with it.
Just more current Dark Tower media.
Yeah. If I had my shit together, I would get the Blu-ray and like watch the special features. There were people, I think it was like Sam in the Slack or somebody in the chat actually got the Blu-ray, and their summary of the special features was, guys, they tried real hard.
Yeah, which I got that feeling even from watching the movie. I was, I think, maybe the only person defending the movie when we talked about it.
Yeah.
And it was mainly because I got like they tried so hard, and it could have been very cool. Yeah. And it
Hey Evan, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Mr_Harder. I'm also at Mr_Harder on Instagram, but I basically never use Instagram. Mm-hmm. So, whatever, do what you will. Yeah, I'm not doing a whole lot else on the internet right now. Pretty much just there.
That's fine. Yeah. And you can find me all the usual places. What I want to direct you to, which I do most times actually, is my streams. If you go to twitch.tv/Duckfeed.tv, you can watch my playthroughs of horror games on the weekends. I've also started doing role-playing games during the week.
Yeah, I really, that I really enjoy the Hexcrank horror streams, and I really need to say though I was disappointed in your branding for the role-playing games, because you went with Cole Plays Games.
Cole Playing Games.
Cole Playing Games, and you abbreviated it as KPG. Mm-hmm. But if you just use your full name, it could have been KRPG.
Have we had this conversation before?
No, I said it on Slack.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm still, every single time it comes up, I'm just like, missed opportunities.
I don't know. It's I think that it is literally just an aesthetic distinction.
No, it's those are very fun also. Like I think described your YouTube streams and stuff as like, video game YouTube for grown-ups, mm-hmm. which is in short supply on YouTube.
I appreciate
video game content for grown-ups is hard to come by. So definitely if you are a grown-up who likes video games enough to watch someone else play them on the internet, check that out.
Yeah. Those are archived at youtube.com/DuckFeed.tv as well. And I'm also on the other shows on Duckfeed.tv.
Yeah, like almost all of them.
Most of them, except for Everything to Guppy, the new show about the Binding of Isaac, and also Teenage Dirtbags, which is coming back. Which is back. Yes.
Yes. The other thing I would like to plug real briefly is Gary Butterfield just released Atomic, which is the second book in the Worlds of Power series, which is a spoof on the god-awful Power Worlds weird video game fiction, not quite choose your own adventure.
It's like not novelizations,
not novels.
Yeah, it's like novelizations of Nintendo games.
Yeah, it was a whole weird thing, and Gary has he released one a year or two ago called Souls of Darkness, which, shocker, is about Dark Souls, or kind of a parody of Dark Souls, and it's great. And Atomic is kind of riffing on the Fallout universe, and it's very, very fun, and definitely check that out.
Yeah, and I am actually going to be doing the audiobook version of that, which means I need to get to work on that. He told me there was no hurry, but I want to have it done. So yeah. If that sounds interesting to you, then do the needful and do the searches for that. I don't know that he has just go to powerworlds.com. There we go.
Yeah.
Cool.
I started making noises with my voice that sound like I had something to say, and I realized after I started that I really don't.
Well, we can draw it to a close. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the remainder of this book. You can check out the schedule on the website, see what's coming up. But until then, long days and pleasant nights.